You're welcome, everyone. We're continuing with our series on the Pāramī, the beautiful qualities of the mind that we want to develop. We're using Ajahn Sucitto's book called Pāramī. There's 2 copies left I saw downstairs on the trolley, so if you'd like a copy, the first 2 people can have one. And it is available online as a PDF as well. So tonight we're studying truthfulness, and the Pali word for that is Sacca. And there's actually 2 parts to truthfulness. And I wasn't really aware of, I'd never really thought about this before I read Ajahn Sucitto's chapter. So the first part of truthfulness is morality. So that's the part that we're mostly aware of. Don't tell lies, don't spread rumors or gossip. But the second aspect to it is perception, truthfulness in perception, seeing things in an undistorted way. And until we're fully awakened, we're always going to have some distortion in how we perceive things. So being able to perceive things in a truthful way, that requires introspection and meditation and Kalyanamitas. Kalyanamitas are good spiritual friends, because when we're blind to certain things, we can't see it ourselves. So we have to have a good friend who can sort of tap us on the shoulder and say, I think you're not perceiving that quite correctly. So we need to learn to distinguish our assumptions that we make about life and our wishes from how things really truly are. And there's 10 paramis, and the Pāramī of truthfulness is built upon all the previous paramis that we've been studying. So the first 2 are the paramis of generosity and morality, and they're a baseline for truthfulness because they help us develop empathy for others and non-harming. And when we can do that, that helps us to see what wounds and numbs our own heart. And next is the Pāramī of renunciation, also known as simplifying. And that helps truthfulness by separating awareness from the impulses and emotions we experience around sense objects. So we have the sensory input comes in, and then we're going to have some kind of reaction or emotion that gets triggered by that. And so we need to be able to separate the 2 out. And on a deeper level, renunciation or simplifying helps us to get in touch with our views and attitudes, which may be distorted. And then that's going to certainly distort our perception. Next is the Pāramī of wisdom, which helps us discern what is skillful and what is unskillful. And when all of these paramis are working together, then the next Pāramī, energy, then it just sort of naturally arises. And then all of these together give us the strength to be patient when difficult situations arise, to not be blown around by the situation, but to maintain a steady awareness. And in this steady awareness, we witness our emotions and our impulses arising and changing. So what's happening, that's the truth of the moment. But we have to be aware of when we get an emotion or an impulse that we don't own it. We don't take it as me or mine or myself. We don't have to act on these impulses or emotions that arise. We just watch them arise and pass. And one of the ways we can do that when it's a really powerful emotion that feels like it really starts to consume us is to use the holding technique. And when we do the holding technique, Thich Nhat Hanh gave it that word because he had us use the metaphor of holding a hurt child. in your arms. And so when we're having a difficult emotion, we're that hurt child at the moment. And so we want to metaphorically hold ourselves with love, with kindness, with gentleness, with understanding, with love. So we need to get out of our head, because all of the thoughts we're thinking are just fuel to the fire of that emotion. So we have to get out of our head, scan your body, and find out where you're tensing or having a physical reaction to that emotion. And then you just lovingly hold your attention. That's the metaphor of holding the baby. You're holding the hurt baby. You lovingly hold your attention on that physical sensation that goes with the emotion. And because you're not fueling it with your thoughts, it's eventually going to stop, because there's nothing to keep it going. So that's the holding technique when we have strong emotions that come up. Because we want to get the mind to equanimity, because we can make wise decisions re what we should do about any situation when we're having that equanimous situation going on. We need to be so careful of assumptions and subsequent behaviors conjured up to fend off things that we fear. It's best to be straightforward and just check out assumptions. Like, don't go with them, check them out with the other person. But when you're doing that, when you're checking out your assumptions with another person, you need to follow the parameters of right speech. And the big one is picking the right time to do that. You're not going to try and sort something out, out with somebody else if they're tired, if they're hungry, if they're in a rush to go somewhere else. So picking the right time is very important. And it's very important to have metta, or loving friendliness, in your heart when you're doing this, not having anger towards the other person. And it should, of course, be beneficial if you're going to sort this out. Now, what I want to do is I want to just pull up here, screen share the peace treaty, which is a beautiful way that Thich Nhat Hanh, it's a treaty that the Thich Nhat Hanh drew up to help people to sort out when they're having sort of difficult emotions or something arising between the two of you. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so this is found on the website, on our website, under teachings, and it's the basic teachings, lesson 3. And the holding technique is also explained in there if you want to review that. So, so what Thich Nhat Hanh does is he divides this peace treaty into 2 parts. So part 1 is for the person that's been triggered, and they're feeling hurt, angry, scared, whatever. And then the other part, the second part of the treaty, is for the person who did something that stimulated that. Or maybe they did nothing and you're just making an assumption because they sighed or they rolled their eyes or did something. And it may have nothing to do with you, but you make the assumption that they're having some kind of a concern about you. So anyway, this part, the first part, is the person that's been triggered in this feeling and emotion. So he's saying, first of all, you need to accept that you have this feeling, like I, the one who is angry, sad, hurt, lonely, etc. Agree to 1, refraining from saying or doing anything that might cause further damage or escalate our feelings. So if you're gonna be spouting off hurtful, negative comments, zip it until you get yourself settled down and can get into a more equanimous state. But you don't want to suppress your feelings. And what he's suggesting is that we do breathing meditation or something to get yourself calmed down. Once you're calm, You want to tell the other person who triggered your feelings about how you're feeling. And he's saying if it takes more than 24 hours to calm down, then write them a note. You don't want this to go on for like days and weeks before going around in a funk and not sharing. So if you can't calmly say it in 24 hours, then write a little note to them. And this is when and in that note or verbally, you're going to ask for a time. This is the good time when the person's not, tired or hungry or rushing off to something, and the same for yourself. So a good time when you can sit down and talk about this situation. So number 6 is sort of the same as number 2. Don't suppress your feelings. Don't say, oh, I'm not angry, or it's okay, or I'm not suffering, or, oh, there's nothing to be upset about. So just make sure if you're having a reaction that you accept, okay, this is the truth of the moment, and it may need to be dealt with. Then number 7, look deeply into my daily life while sitting, walking, and breathing in order to see the ways I have not been mindful or skillful enough. So what he's getting at here is when we get triggered, we go sort of into tunnel vision, like I'm the innocent person, I'm Lily White, and that other person, that did or said something, they're, black as coal, and and you're in tunnel vision. And even though this might be somebody that you love, at this moment, you don't see any of their good qualities. You're just tunnel vision. I'm right, they're wrong, they did something bad. And you're in this super tunnel vision. So what number 7 is getting you to open up and see that the other person has good qualities. I mean, why are you going to be in a relationship with them if they didn't have good qualities? So it's to open up your awareness. So you're not just feeling hurt by this one thing, but you can see their good qualities as well. But also for yourself to notice that you're not the perfect person. That at times you've been cranky and said the wrong thing or done things to hurt other people, maybe not intentionally, but whatever. So it's opening up your awareness to both the other person and yourself, that you're both human beings and have your skillful qualities and your unskillful qualities. So he says here, number 7, look deeply into my daily life while sitting, walking, breathing in order to see the ways I have not been mindful or skillful enough. A, how in the past I have hurt the other person because of my own habit energy. B, how the strong seed of anger or sadness or whatever planted in me from multiple previous woundings is the primary cause of our feelings. So it's not what happened today. It's because this issue has happened many times before in this life, and who knows how many times in previous lives. And so we've got this whole big well, and now it's sort of like the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's what happened today. And so it's just trying to help you see it's not just this final straw of today, it's all the other straws that have been planted there over a long period of time. C, how the other person's behavior watered the seeds of my feelings, and this is the secondary cause of my present feelings. Or, as I said, maybe the other person didn't do anything, but you've made a negative assumption, because they looked a certain way or their voice tone was a certain way. Maybe they had a stomach ache and they frowned or something, and then you think it's something about you and it's about their stomach ache. D, now, if the other person really did do something to poke you, how the other person is suffering, and if they knowingly water the seeds of my suffering, it is because they are only seeking relief from their own suffering. Not a skillful thing to do, but it's just helping you see what they're doing. E, as long as the other person suffers, I cannot be truly happy. Number 8, apologize immediately without waiting for this meeting that you've set up. As soon as I realize my unmindfulness unskillfulness and lack of mindfulness. So if you're aware of how you've contributed to whatever this interaction was, you want to apologize. When the time of this meeting comes up, if you're not yet calm enough, because you want to be in equanimity when you have this meeting, if you're not yet calm enough, then postpone the meeting, make it for another day or two away. Okay, now we move to the second half. Now this is the person that's done something maybe to trigger you. So I, the one who has made the other angry or sad or hurt or whatever, 1, respect the other person's feelings and not ridicule him or her, and allow enough time for them to calm down. 2, not press for an immediate discussion. You know, how often have you seen the situation where somebody gets upset and they run into the bedroom and slam the door, and the other person's running after them and banging on the door wanting to talk now? So suppress that urge, let them have time to calm down. When the other person asks for a meeting, then confirm, that yes, you can be there. Now you're going to, if you're the one that's triggered this off, now you're going to practice breathing, calming down to see, I have the seeds of unkindness and anger, as well as the habit energy to make the other person unhappy. So this is a big thing. We're talking about truthfulness here. And this is a big thing to accept. Like, who me? Hurt another? Well, if we really look at it, we can be unskillful at times, and we can say or do things that can be hurtful. And so it's really important to own it, to be truthful about that. B, I have sought relief from my own suffering by making the other person suffer, if that was the case. C, by making him or her suffer, I make myself suffer. 5, apologize as soon as I realize my unskillfulness and lack of mindfulness without making any attempt to justify myself. If you say, I always use this silly example of leaving your dirty socks in the hallway. If you say, I'm really sorry I left my dirty socks in the hallway, and then you say, well, I was really tired, or like I was in a rush to get off to my meeting or whatever. It's like you hand the apology, and then when you give the excuse, it's like you take it back. So you just have to say, I'm really sorry I left my dirty socks in the hallway, and then zip. Later on, when you have your meeting and you talk it back and forth, then you can say your excuse. But when you give the apology, just apologize. No excuses, or else it does not feel like an apology. Okay, and then if you're doing this with somebody that you're close to, like your partner or whatever, then you want to, Thich Nhat Hanh suggests that you read this peace treaty and then meditate on it for a few days, and then there's 2 of you sign it. There's a little place down here where you actually sign it. So you do this at a time when you're, ideally when things are calm with the 2 of you, so that you've got this, so that if a difficult situation comes up, then you can go and refer to this. Now, sometimes you can't, it's not really appropriate to do this because maybe the person you're having difficulty with is your boss at work, or, or somebody that you're not that close to. But then you do the peace treaty as one-sidedly as much as you can. Now, the peace treaty takes you up to the point, like encourages you to breathe and get calm and, organize the time to talk. But it really doesn't give you any instruction of, once you get to that meeting, how do you do that? So I always like to combine the peace treaty with some teachings I had by this marriage therapist called Bernie Gurney. So he's got a nice rhyming name to remember. And he suggested that that if you have something difficult, you don't have to use Bernie Gurney's method all the time if it's just something minor or small, but if there's, if emotions, that could be triggered, can flare up easily, then you may want to do the Bernie Gurney method of discussing whatever the issue is. And he says you want to have something that becomes a symbol of like the peace pipe, like the native peace pipe. And so whatever you have or whatever you want to use. My husband and I, we used to use a baseball cap that we put on our knee. I remember somebody else who had a little statue of an owl, like owls symbolize wisdom, and so they used an owl. But whatever you want, that symbolizes sort of the peace pipe. And then the person who has the symbolic peace pipe, they're the only ones that gets to talk. If you're not holding the peace pipe, you're the one listening to the talker. You've got to zip it. You've got to sit on your stuff until the peace pipe is handed to you, and then you get to talk. So the one who's holding the peace pipe, you're going to talk about a situation, but you don't want it to be like kitchen sink where you just bring up everything in the world you've ever been frustrated about with the other person. You're bringing up one topic, one issue. And the method here is, first of all, to state your feelings, like I was hurt or I was sad or whatever. And then you state what the situation was, but it's not, you don't use inflammatory or accusatory or like you kinds of words. It's what would the video camera see? Like if a video camera was documenting this, just what would so it was just, I was hurt when I saw your dirty socks in the hallway. It's not, I was hurt when I saw your dirty socks in the hallway because you don't care about me, or adding in all kinds of other things. It's just, what did the video camera saw? It saw the dirty socks in the hallway, period. Then number 3, then you say, what did that make you believe? I was hurt when I saw your dirty socks in the hallway because it made me believe you didn't care about me, or it made me believe that you're treating me like a slave or whatever. If you do the accusatory thing, like you don't care about me or then the person immediately becomes defensive. And then, your little discussion is going to go nowhere. But if you just say, I was hurt, so the dirty socks were there, and then that made me believe that you didn't care about me, then if they care about you, then they're going to be like scrambling and say, oh no, I love you, I care about you, and I'm sorry, and like it's tired or whatever. So this is very important. And then the last statement that you make is what you would like to happen. Like, I'd like the dirty socks to be put in the clothes hamper. Then you pass your symbolic peace pipe over to the other person. And then if they got some emotions came up or whatever while you were speaking, now's the time that they can talk. Oh, sorry, I forgot one part. The person who's holding the peace pipe, you don't want to be talking for a long time. You just want to say a few sentences, and then you pause, and then the other person just reflects back what they heard, like paraphrases back what they heard, so that you know that they heard what you said. And if they misunderstood, like if they paraphrase back and it's not quite correct, then you have a chance to say, no, that's not what I meant, and then say it again, and then they can paraphrase it back. And so you're not saying anything of your own stuff. You're just paraphrasing back what the other person said. So they are assured that you heard them. You're sitting on your own stuff until you get the talking pipe or the peace pipe. So once you get the talking stick, then you can say your bit, but again with these 4 states. State your feeling, state the situation that caused that feeling, like what the video camera saw, state what belief came out of that, state what you'd like to happen, if that's appropriate. I mean, it may not be as appropriate, but anyway, just doing it in a non-inflammatory way. And usually it's a very effective way to, and sometimes just by going back and forth a couple of times, the issue is resolved, because it's often just this assumption, this assumption, oh, they don't care about me. And then you find out they do care about you. They were just tired or whatever. And so it's solved. Sometimes it's not solved. At the end, you've heard each other. You know what each other is thinking and feeling, but there's still some kind of a problem solving that has to go on. So I haven't worked that up tonight. So that's another step that sometimes you have to go to. So in summary, the arising of emotions and thoughts are not the problem. They arise due to past causes and conditions. What is important is how we respond to their arising. We need to examine these thoughts or emotions that have arisen. We have to examine them wisely, determine what is true and what is just old energies, what are assumptions, and then determine how to act skillfully, or whether you should act at all. Now, another thing is that we need to be aware of ignorance, which is another form of untruthfulness. Ignorance is believing that having a pleasant sensory experience will lead to lasting happiness, and it won't. It may lead to temporary happiness, but not to lasting happiness. So you need to examine if it's worth the energy output for the temporary happiness. Another form of untruthfulness is casting people in stone. Because of one behavior trait, you see them as either wonderful or horrible. And you ignore all those other traits that just make them a regular human being, like yourself. And we do this sometimes when we have a trait within us that we don't like and we can't accept. And so we, when we see it in somebody else, and we get really upset about it. So when we see that in another, we really dislike that other person instead of seeing them as a struggling human being, just like ourselves. Life gets easier if we stop expecting ourselves to be perfect and others to be perfect. Because the truth is, we can't be perfect. We need the input of others to penetrate our delusions and our ignorance and our sneaky little habit energies. So that's where Kalyanamitta's good spiritual friends come in. So at the end of the chapter, Ajahn Sucitto suggests some exercises that we can do. So he said, instead of saying, I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm sad, then you say, hurt has arisen in me, or anger has arisen in me. Like not owning it, it's just like this is something that's come up because of past causes and conditions. And if you say anger has arisen or hurt has arisen, it's like there's this, it gives you a bit more space where you can examine this wisely. The next exercise is to notice when you say words like always, he or she always, or he, she never, or everyone, or no one. These are very stereotyping words. So you really, if you hear yourself saying that, pause and consider, is this really true? The third exercise is when thoughts arise, remember, they're just thoughts. They aren't your thoughts. You don't own them. This helps us feel a little distance from them so you can evaluate them more clearly, whether they are true or not, or require any action or not. And the final exercise is if you feel anxious when talking to someone or in some situations, you could try grounding yourself by touching your thumbs to your fingers, just sort of the way to sort of try and ground yourself. And then if Bethany, if you can indulge me again, and I'll just let Bethany through the microphone tell you about a beautiful little method that she has of grounding herself when she's, yeah.
Yeah, this is something that specifically has come up for me in working in relationship and finding that frequently I can center myself and find my boundaries and feel like solid in how I want to relate. And then when I'm actually in physical space or in the midst of conversation, like it's really hard to hold on to that. And so having a really physical, tactile, essentially just mindfulness cue. And mine was just to bring a hand somewhere near my heart. And, it came with somebody whose just energy was challenging for me. And it was just this reminder of they don't get to penetrate, like I've got this, like I'm holding the center. But I found it really helpful to just have that, to have the mindfulness cue be a physical tactile thing to bring with me into what could be challenging.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes or so for discussion or questions. Let me see, I'm just going to. I just can't see everybody in the Zoom room. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Just pass the, touch it on your chin, and in the Zoom room people can hear you.
This is more just a question for you guys, but is that like peace treaty available like for free online? Like that's something public you can find?
It's on lesson 3 on our website.
Oh, on the website.
Yeah,
Okay,
so you go to on the menu, you go to teachings, then you go to the basic lessons, which is the second choice, and then you go to lesson 3. And it's not just the first, like there's a 1-page thing, and then at the bottom it says download the entire PDF lesson. That's what you have to do. That's where it is.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. Do you want to? Yeah. You might have to step forward a little bit. Thank you. And just touch it on your chin. Yeah.
We were talking about, I forget how I think it was the method of having those difficult conversations and how to say, choose your wording to blame,
Yeah.
but to say, when this happens, this is how I feel.
Yeah.
Have you had a lot of experience with people not responding well? Like the idea is you're not blaming them, but if somebody else is maybe not, I don't know, same mental space as you, or is used to having that kind of a conversation, if you have experiences where it's still that kind of conversation is still challenging to them and they might still interpret that as blame, and if so, then how do you know?
Yeah. So did everybody hear that? No. Okay. Your voice was a bit soft. So the question was, does this always work when you do the Bernie Gurney style, or does it fail at times? And yeah, for sure, it can fail at times. Certainly my experience is if you leave out the inflammatory, if you leave out the big finger sort of pointing and saying, like like you're this, you're that, and instead say, it makes me believe, the response is just so different. It's, it triggers the compassion. Like if you're doing the pointy finger, you, it triggers defensiveness. But if you're saying, I'm sad because, I have this belief, then it triggers compassion. So, most of my experience has been positive, but I've definitely had experiences in my life with people who are, very, very fragile, like very easily wounded. And it doesn't matter how carefully you speak to them. they can just be incredibly hurt. Yeah, so that it's a difficult situation, but and then you have to sort of work with yourself to know that your intentions were good, you're doing the best you can, and yeah, and it just doesn't work with everybody, and some people are just too wounded to take that in.
I think there's one other framework that I know what you're asking totally, Melissa. This Bernie Gurney style is very similar to Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, and he has many stories about it can be a little bit clumsy or a little bit formulaic, especially when you're trying to learn to speak in this way with these steps. But a very useful shorthand is, and the Buddha actually teaches this, that there's a big difference between a person's intention in what they've said or done and the impact that their actions or their words have had on you as the recipient. And sometimes when we start to talk about the impact, people feel that their intentions are being accused or misunderstood. So it can be, you could say something that you feel is non-inflammatory, like I felt hurt when, and then they'll be, well, I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't trying to hurt you. And so I think sometimes you can go into these conversations trying to clearly delineate. These are two really separate things, and they don't cancel each other out. The fact that I did something in this relationship and I thought I was being really helpful, and the impact is that the person felt, disempowered or not believed in, or, it had a completely opposite. The fact that they're trying to communicate that to me, and then I'm just coming back with, but that's not what I meant, and that's not, you don't understand. So sometimes if you can just really, really separate them, and you can kind of begin by acknowledging, it seems to me like you were trying to help or whatever, and talk about the intention, and then say, however, the impact was. Sometimes people don't need to be as on board with, being very self-reflective and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As long as they're feeling like, oh, my intentions were understood or were seen or were heard, then they can maybe have space to hear the impact.
But so in general, you want to be honest with the person in a conflict that, like, the way you said this or the way you did this made me feel this way. And that's how I perceived it, whether you knew that or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pastor Mia.
Are there tools for people who are really anxious around communication and confrontation, and how to be truthful and how to feel when you're really afraid of hurting the other person by bringing how you're feeling up?
Mhm.
I find how often, kind of suppress my own truth in order to keep the peace between, even though I've learned recently that really that communication is just a form of care and love in a relationship, but still, I think maybe because of like old wounds or whatever,
Right.
can be tricky sometimes to really show up and move forward.
Yeah, I think if it's the first time, you're talking to a person about something tender like this, uh, I think it's a good idea to try to do it. But if you get stonewalled or there's no way you can talk to them without them just totally freaking out or not being able to listen or whatever, then there's just some people that you learn that you can't do this with. And so then you have to put up your own emotional boundaries. You're probably not going to be really intimate or close with that person. You might still have to interact with them because they're in the workplace or or wherever. But you're just going to set up your own emotional boundaries. But I think what you don't want to do is assume it's going to bomb and then never do it. Yeah. So I think at least give the other person the chance, and the respect to try and work it out, you know. And you can always couch it in words like, I want to talk to you about something, I think it's going to be kind of difficult, but I care about you and I'd really, really want to do this. So can we find a time where we're both, not rushed or whatever? And you can try and sort of set it up. um, yeah. But what I find is a lot of people just assume it's going to bomb and then never try, and so don't make that assumption.
Yeah, people can surprise you.
Hmm.
And the other thing is you can start a little bit small, like I'm classic people pleaser. And so yeah, it can be difficult for me to show up in relationship because um I know so much about how the other person's feeling, and so easy to take their perspective. Anyway, and sadly, this comes into my relationship with my children. And thankfully, they keep giving me signals and they'd rather real mom than nice mom, which has been very helpful for me. But so I tend to try and show up in little things like saying what I'd like to eat, or my preferences or whatever, the little things that are just more of real me. And that's been very helpful for me. It's given me more confidence because then I see like, oh, it's more real. So it's actually more of the connection that I've been trying to get through this way of people pleasing, which is so doesn't work. And so that's been helpful for me, give me more and more confidence, come forward in more and more relationships in more and more ways. Because then I actually have real connection. Yeah. And it actually is true in my own meditation too, like being more and more real, more and more honest for how I actually feel about things, and then you get more connection with yourself too. Yeah. It was a big area.
Anyone in the Zoom room with any questions or comments? Okay, so I think normally we'd be doing muditas or closing, but we're trying to end our meetings on time, and we're not going to have time for that with all the people here. So we'll just do a very, very short closing. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Please, Blair.
Glenn.
Mr. Fletcher. Agnes. Russell. Dan. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.